Okay, good afternoon. My name is Hallyu, professor at Simon Fraser University, most beautiful city, Vancouver in Canada. I hope that you enjoyed the wonderful lunch better than yesterday. Okay. Our session is Global Perspectives on Hallyu, known as the Korean Wave. Each team has its own liberty to organize the presentation and the discussion. We have the 4 panelists, so each presenter has 12 minutes. After the all presentations, we have the discussions by the 2 scholars. So presentation first, followed by discussion. But we have the one more special session by the Professor Hong Seok-kyung in the Department of Communication at SNU. As the team leader, the presenter Hong is going to talk about the introduction, the serialization of the Korean wave for 5 minutes, followed by a presentation. So let me introduce Professor Hong.
Thank you very much. Hello, I am Seok-kyung Hong. I'm actually director for the Center for Hallyu Studies. I will be very brief, and because we have the 4 presentation. So my speech today is rather influenced by what we have listened yesterday too. So it's a more less introduction of our team's research, but the relations between Hallyu and new Korean studies and the things that I had in my mind yesterday. The Center for Hallyu Studies opened at SNU Asia Center in March 2022. The center studies the context and the meaning of the Hallyu phenomenon, that is the successful acceptance and reception of Korean popular culture in the world, as well as the production of Korean popular culture that caused it. We participate in the contemporary Korean studies movement with this team Hallyu. It became possible as a result of the domestic and international research network formed during the 3-year research activities of the Center for Hallyu Studies, of course. So the team Hallyu is composed of 13 researchers. You can be informed about the center's activities on the website that you can find on Asian Center website as well. Our theoretical framework and the title of the book, which is currently being prepared, is Global Perspectives on Hallyu. It consists of 3 parts and 12 chapters, historicizing Hallyu and theorizing Hallyu and decolonizing Hallyu. That I do not get into details for secure time for discussion today. So briefly, the relationship between Hallyu phenomenon and new Korean studies. Why Hallyu? What's the place of Hallyu in this new movement? As you can see from yesterday's presentations of the four teams and 4 sessions, Hallyu is relatable in many ways with the renewal of Korean studies. Koreans, as citizens of a rapidly developing country after Korean War and during 70s, 80s, and 90s, didn't have money for pleasure activity, for leisure activities, so they consumed media. Educated, they were very curious, exigent, and reactive. They have been engaged in media, forcing the media workers to be inventive and creative to propose them stories meaningful for society. Through this process, now we have a master plot to analyze and the narratives of contemporary survivalism to delve into in this divergently converging capitalism, still with the neo of feminism. Amazingly, this is terrible. In many sense of the term, our content, the Korean contents are very terrible. These terrible stories have become a great inspiration to the people around the world. For these reasons and many others, I think Hallyu is a good excuse or an alibi, kind of justification, 명분, for the new Korean studies movement, of course. And it could also be a remedy for some problems of Korean society, I think. For example, Hallyu could be a positive power to procure new qualified citizens for Korea society, suffering a tragically low birth rate too. And through this, in this process, I think it can change the history of Korea, of course, and influence the region and the world as well. Definitively, Hallyu has influenced knowledge needs on Korea. A more comprehensive understanding of contemporary Korean society beyond developmentalism, and a Korean history connected to world history, and knowledge of the formation, development, and system of Korean popular culture that made possible Hallyu, and the needs for critical escape from the norms of Anglo-American or Euro-American centric knowledge production and evaluation too. Above all, Hallyu made the changes in the understanding of the Korea's status in the world through a continuous reflection on the me and the other, the same and the different, lui-même et l'autre in French. It makes us critically and continuously reflect on the meaning of Korea in the world. This world is, as Director Bong Joon-ho said, a global world where Hallyu is local. So Team Hallyu shares these research questions, and we are preparing for publication that mentioned above. Today's 4 papers, we will present 4 papers. They address the institutionalization of the Hallyu phenomenon and its history in the regional context, and a post-colonial analysis on K-beauty as well. Okay, thank you, and it's for you.
Okay, thanks, Professor.
Thank you.
The first presenter is Professor Yong An-jo. He's professor in Korean Studies at the Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Professor Jo research interests include media, cultural studies, global sports, and nationalism. So it's yours.
Thank you for a wonderful introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed the meal, both online and offline. I'm very happy to be part of this meaningful initiative. I'm also very glad to be part of the team, the Global Hallyu. So my presentation today is not about Hallyu itself, but it's about the Hallyu studies. So there is no picture or BOD, but it's full of the text, sorry. So to be specific, I'm trying to advocate Hallyu studies as a tool for decolonial knowledge production in the global hierarchy. So for that purpose, I suggest a kind of history approach. That is to say, to locate Hallyu studies within the broader context of East Asia's modernization and its regional pop culture. However, my approach does not embrace so-called Asian value or Confucianism as a kind of core background of Asia. I'm kind of against it, nor I'm trying to against for fetishizing the region here, East Asia, nor fetishizing the local case, South Korea. Rather, I would like to suggest that Hallyu studies must consider its social material conditions as well as its historical background very seriously. Here, social and material conditions include economy, politics, as well as, of course, media technologies. And background, historical background refers to national and regional history and geopolitics and kind of the regional rivalry among neighboring countries. So to connect Hallyu with East Asia, I would like to pay attention to 2 dimensions. The first is that Hallyu, as one layer of East Asian pop culture, could be made possible along with the modernization of East Asia. Here, modernization includes industrialization, capital market, urbanization, increase of the middle class and their ways of the consumerism and patterns of consuming something, and all of which contribute burgeoning of media industry in the region and very active circulation of mass media popular culture, which can be referred to East Asian pop culture since 1980s. The second is that Hallyu studies both Hallyu reflects and constructs the emerging structure of feeling in East Asia, which can be called East Asian sensibilities. To repeat, Hallyu doesn't do it alone. Instead, Hallyu does it along with other regional flow, such as Cantonese pop culture, Japanese, and Hong Kong pop culture too. So, as a regional reciprocal, as well as its latest trend, Hallyu is engaged with connecting diverse people, society in the region. So, given such a close connection of Hallyu with East Asia, I think that Hallyu itself is an example of decolonial cultural practice. It is not because Hallyu is kind of best pop culture or Hallyu really dominates the world, but because Hallyu could disrupt the centrism or dominance of US pop culture or Hollywood in the era of global pop culture. In this sense, I think Hallyu studies is also able to challenge the global hierarchy of knowledge production, in which the Euro-American centrism still prevails both in an institutional and a theoretical level. For institutional levels, the scholars in Euro-American university often occupy the hegemony position, and for a theoretical level, studies on Euro-American contexts are usually treated as theoretical ones, while studies on non-West is relegated as case studies. So, in order to utilize Hallyu studies as a decolonial practice, I want to delve into two issues. They are inter-Asia, and the other is the idea of geopolitics of knowledge. Inter-Asia literally means kind of intra-relation in Asia. But inter-Asia as a kind of theoretical term has been developed and promotes both as a theoretical concept and movement among Asian cultural studies scholars since 1990s. And its core agenda is to encourage Asian cultural studies scholars to meet each other and have conversation and have a kind of read each own works and use each own works for their own studies, instead of looking the West only. And their effort has been well concretized into several outcomes, such as International Journal of Inter-Asia Cultural Studies, the Academic Institute of Inter-Asia Cultural Studies Society, and its biannual conference, summer camp, and occasional academic event, and etc. And as a theoretical spin-off, the concept of inter-Asia referencing is more directly linked with the Hallyu and East Asian pop culture. And in the first level, East Asian referencing refers to the practice of kind of the consulting or cross-checking the counterpart of regional pop culture. So Hallyu is heavily influenced by local pop culture, such as Japanese drama and Hong Kong film. And the next level, inter-Asia referencing could extend into people's migrant movement within the region. So as you know, Hallyu is kind of the motivator for moving people very vibrantly in and outside of South Korea. And among people's movement, the academic movement also included. So by having meeting together, regional scholars came to know each other and recognize their own works in East Asian pop culture and Hallyu studies. And second topic is geopolitics of knowledge. Here, geopolitics of knowledge refers to embedded nature of knowledge within local context and history. And I want to underscore that in Hallyu studies, the consideration of geopolitics of knowledge is more than important. In the first level, the emphasis on geopolitics of knowledge turns scholars' attention to the context of producing, circulating, and consuming pop culture rather than its content. I think content analysis or psychoanalysis is good, but not enough for Hallyu studies and other pop culture studies, because Hallyu is the phenomenon culturally and historically embedded in its context, particularly the fans' active consumption and utilize of their pop product in their daily life, and their influence on society are very crucial. Secondly, geopolitics of knowledge is less about the nationality or ethnicity of researchers, but it's more about the researchers' physical location and time and the placeness of their works. In existing global hierarchy, i.e., the Euro-American centrism still dominates, the researchers' ethnicities are used for justifying their works on the local issues. So for instance, in Hallyu studies, regardless of their academic specialization, for instance, Korean nationality or Asian ethnicity, in combination with prestige of American university with native English, are used for positioning them as a Hallyu expert. By considering geopolitics of knowledge seriously, I think Hallyu studies and its scholar actively resist such existing practice or hierarchy in global academy. Nonetheless, I do not suggest that the scholars only in South Korea or East Asia are eligible for studying Hallyu, because Hallyu is globalized. So Hallyu study also pay attention to such a global context in which the experience of knowledge of local fans, for instance, in Europe or Latin America or in the United States are also necessary. So to wrap up, I would like to read my final sentence of my paper. So I suggest that Hallyu studies is utilized for the colonial knowledge production, in which local pop culture, regional audiences, and contexts are carefully examined, and the inter-Asian knowledge production can be used for meaningful reference points, both for regional and global scholars on Hallyu and other culture. And I hope that not only Hallyu studies, but also these contemporary Korean studies could signal another milestone for starting kind of the decolonial knowledge production in the world. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Professor Cho, for your wonderful presentation. The second presenter is Professor Haekyung who is the senior lecturer in the Department of Music and the Institute of Popular Culture at the University of Liverpool. Trained in ethnomusicology and anthropology, Professor has undertaken ethnographic research in Korea, China, Russia, and Central Asia.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. I've been given 12 minutes to run through quite a few slides, but most of them are the pictures. First of all, I really thank the Seoul National University, especially Professor Hong Seok-kyung, to include me into this brilliant project. In fact, the paper which I'm going to present today is kind of developed from my own kind of the research project, which is funded by ESRC in the UK, to form a network of scholars from Korea, South Korea, and the UK to develop a kind of interdisciplinary network on the topic of Hallyu, especially on archiving exhibition. So this is the reason why I'm going to talk about the Korean Wave and the museum exhibition, which started in the V&A in London in 2022. Hallyu, Korean Wave, is usually considered to be a Korean national phenomena. If this is the case, and this Koreanness and the national leads to the question of heritage, which is a very important aspect of Korea as a self-identity. So then Hallyu, but then Hallyu is a very globalized already. So then where we are going to locate the Koreanness and the national? So in this the context on Hallyu and the making of the cultural heritage, we really need to ask some questions. Firstly, how the national of Hallyu is constructed and expressed when Hallyu has become global and the transnational cultural product. And what is meant by Korean and the national in the context of Hallyu, and what has it to do with the identity questions? Hallyu and the politics of placeness, nation state, local, transnational, global, all these things are inextricably linked with each other. On top of it, there's a power relations, quite often unequal power relationship between all these different kind of placeness. The next question is, can Hallyu become a cultural heritage of a contemporary South Korea? That's quite a new question because no one really thinks Hallyu as a potential cultural heritage material or candidate. So what kind of a cultural heritage is Hallyu for South Korea, if at all? Another thing is, as a media text, can Hallyu be documentary heritage, which is a third category of a UNESCO heritage, in addition to dual concept of a tangible and intangible heritage? All these questions, actually there are more questions than anyone can answer in 12 minutes presentation. So I ask many questions and throw the questions to all of us, and then I will give some kind of examples of it in images and the three case studies of Hallyu exhibition, which I've been to. Before then, I would like to say something about the relationship in Hallyu Cultural Heritage Museum. Hallyu and the making of a cultural heritage in the digital technology and the museum context is a very specific kind of type of a query. And the case studies I'm going to talk about is a Hallyu exhibition in the museum in the UK, which is a Victorian Albert Museum, and in South Korea, National Museum of Contemporary History, and the Gwangju History and the Folk Museum, both in South Korea. And then also I would like to see how a musealization of a Hallyu gives shape to the selective canonization process for its music, dramas, film. And another thing is why these canons really matter. All this Hallyu curation exhibition in the UK and South Korea so far, they all employ multimedia displays, technological immersion, and the high-level interaction exhibit, and also breaks down the barrier of a high and low arts. And also the selecting and the creating Hallyu already gets into canonization, the process, because who selects and the why. And then the process of heritage making is initiated through the musealization of Hallyu. By being in the museum itself, it become kind of, it kind of starts the heritage making process. At the same time, museums are also platforms of power. So in this context, we can really consider the South Korean popular culture and the associated creative industries are deployed as a tool for cultural and the political diplomacy and the soft power generator. So first example is the Hallyu exhibition in V&A, which went on for 9 months, September 2022 to June 2023. And it was free for V&A members and the £20 for non-members. And it was sponsored by the Korean Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, and also Korean luxury manufacturer of a Hyundai Motor Group. So you can see that the shared interest of the state and commerce. And they put in the chronological structure, and this narrative emphasized a strong national building process, nation building process through the 20th century and its global success in the 21st century, economically, culturally. So it's a really big, and then also there's extensive audience engagement programs and the exhibition-related events, including 2-day symposium at the end of the exhibition period for 9 months. So these are this is the first, I will just flip through. This one is actually a video, but I don't have really time to do it. This is what you see when you enter the place, and as you can see this, the Gangnam Style. And then also from rubble to smartphone, from 기술 강국의 대지까지, yeah. And then some of the old, and of course you can't really miss it. And this, and they even brought the smell. Yes, even the smell. It's a real experience. And this is the Baek Namjoon's and the video installation, and I had to make it into slides. And this was a commission for this exhibition. That was a kind of the video thing, which I had to kind of make it into slides. And some of the beauty product, as you can see, and the tradition and the modernity side by side, and the fashion. And this is an enormous kind of undertaking, and it took very long time to go through the whole thing, and it's a really wonderful experience to see. And also by the end of the exhibition, you are fully informed about Korean history from the 20th century to the mid-20th century to the present time. And the second example, the pop culture we loved and the rise of the Korean wave, which was held in the National Museum of Contemporary History in Seoul, was very much inspired by the V&A exhibition. But the sizes are much, much smaller, and it was curated by the curator working for the museum. And of course, it being the museum being the kind of a part of the Korean Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, everything was rather the smaller scale, and the time was rather limited. They only have a 5.5 weeks exhibition. It's rather short. But the difference here is that although they had a chronological structure, but its narrative emphasized the specificity of South Korean popular culture, which was shaped by various influences from, firstly, the United States, and secondly, from other Asian nations like Hong Kong and Japan in the 20th century. And the thirdly was the regional and the global success in the 21st century. The 3 sections, which you can really see how they kind of put things together. And the many items collected and created from local private collectors and consumers is a very kind of personable. Some of them are handwritten. So it really kind of provoking pop nostalgia for those who came to see it, because it was really, really relatable. And so that was so I have 2 minutes. Yeah. Okay. So this is the America, Hollywood, and some of the, and this is Chinese. Yeah, oh, sorry, Hong Kong. Excuse me, Hong Kong, and some of the Japan. And then this is how it was on one space, rather small, but whereas the V&A exhibition is really big. And then, so some of the earlier one, and the Japan, and then there's the billboard, and then finally, Bangtanso년, yeah. So it really has had a really small, but they really compact and make some sense to, especially to Korean audience. And the third one was the pop culture Gwangju loved and the rise of a Korean wave, which was held in June and August 18th, just the last week. And again, it's the same organization under the Ministry of Culture and Sports and Tourism. And they had the same kind of a structure, except that they had an additional section which focused in the local popular culture of Gwangju. So they put in the center of the hall. And this is, as you can see, 광주가 사랑했던 한류. It's very, very, and here they put in the middle and the center, and they show everything about Gwangju, Chungjeongro, and about the songs about Gwangju and the song that's performed by Gwangju, so those who are born in Gwangju, and so on and so forth. And this probably, if you can, this is the Queen Elizabeth, the coronation poster, well, which they was made in the Gwangju movie theater. And this is kind of a very, very locally specific, but it was a very significant. Apparently, this curator, oops, sorry. Okay, I have about 1 minute to wrap up. So some observations, because it's a work in progress. I just started, literally. There's still more exhibitions to see, the one in Ulsan and the one in, hopefully in San Francisco. These three exhibitions emphasize the global success of Hallyu. And all museums serve a role of a platform for soft power of the Korean popular culture, but with a different scales, emphases, and approaches. So it has kind of its own soft power, because as a world-leading museum known for its expertise in curating and exhibiting popular cultures across the world. So V&A International Tour in the USA there was a one in Boston, and there's another one coming up in Asian Arts Museum in San Francisco. This is the one which I would like to go to. And then the National Museum of Contemporary Art History, they kind of their curational approach is to really to communicate with the South Korean popular, the South Korean audience, to talk about specificity of the South Korean popular culture. And in contrast, the Gwangju, the museum, the approach is that they really wanted to showcase the Gwangju's the special kind of place in Korean kind of culture, and also their local arts and their heritage, and also importance about placeness and the city's self-identification as a Yehyang, which is an artistic city, to distinguish itself from the rest of the South Korea, from cultural and geopolitical point of view. Geographical or geopolitical point of view, it should be both ways. So in this context, the ongoing Hallyu exhibition project across and beyond South Korea would tell us so much about the different curational approaches and exhibition context and audience reception, all of which will give shape to the making of a Hallyu canon and the cultural heritage. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much, Professor We slightly changed the presentation order, and the third presenter is now Dr. Sojong Park. Sojong Park is a cultural studies scholar whose interests span diverse aspects of popular culture and digital culture. She is currently a research fellow at the Center for Hallyu Studies at Seoul National University, but I learned that she will be a new faculty member at Hanyang University. Am I right? So, yeah, very exciting. It's our new blood. Okay, so we have the but unluckily, she got COVID. So we had to ask her to make the video presentation. So we'll watch the video presentation together.
Hi, I'm Sojong Park, a research fellow at the Center for Hallyu Studies at Seoul National University. Today, I'm going to talk about a post-colonial perspective on Hallyu by using K-beauty as a case. Commonly, when people think of beauty, it's easy to associate it with a superficial culture focused on appearance. However, beauty must be understood within the broader context of global cultural flows, technological advancements, and post-colonial power dynamics. This study aims to examine K-beauty from the perspective of identity politics through a post-colonial lens, exploring its implications and limitations. K-beauty essentially refers to Korean beauty, but it encompasses the contemporary beauty culture, images, and practices created and mediated internationally by Korea's cosmetics and media industries. The growing influence of K-beauty is reflected not only in the increasing export of Korean cosmetics, but also in the way people discuss and emulate K-beauty trends online. The core of K-beauty is centered around achieving beautiful, clear skin. The K-beauty 10-step skincare routine is widely known, and the ideal K-beauty complexion is often described using the terms like porcelain skin or glass skin, highlighting its focus on flawless, luminous skin. The construction of beauty standards is deeply embedded within the power dynamics of race, where Western media has historically positioned white individuals as the unrace norm, and this effectively normalizes whiteness as both the default human condition and the pinnacle of beauty standards. Meanwhile, Asian, and specifically Asian women's appearances have been exoticized and stereotyped within a narrow frame of Western perception, often labeled as unattractive by mainstream standards while simultaneously being fetishized for their exotic qualities. Moreover, the beauty practices of Asian women have been framed negatively. It is considered as a denial of their authentic ethnic identity, pathological behavior, or an attempt to conform to white beauty ideals. However, these views fail to recognize the agency of Asian women in navigating and contesting the complex terrain of global beauty standards. I'd like to argue that K-beauty can provide a case where Asians' beautification can be interpreted as a pursuit of a more creative form of self-expression and definition beyond the racialized visuality imposed by Western-centric imagination. First, K-beauty provides a new model within Asian community. K-beauty is not completely something new, but it emerged within a trans-Asian flow, much like Japan's manga aesthetics. Additionally, with the increasing number of Southeast Asian artists in K-pop, K-beauty is becoming a more relatable ideal for Asian women, offering an alternative to the distant standards of Western beauty. The popularity of K-beauty is rapidly rising in the Southeast Asian region, with some even developing their own K-beauty products using the word Seoul. The Korean word chokchok, meaning moist, is being used internationally as well and has become a kind of lingua franca in the beauty industry. I would like to discuss the post-colonial implications of K-beauty being circulated as a new model of beauty within Asia. The flawless, immaculate, and bright skin, which is the essence of the K-beauty, can be interpreted as a deconstructing racialized visuality. Traditionally, Asians have been racialized as yellow, a categorization rooted in a Western perspective. By appropriating the aesthetic feature of white skin, Asians challenge the monopoly of whiteness on beauty standards, complicating ethnic visuality and questioning the authority of white beauty norms. Echoing Homi Bhabha's notion of mimicry, which suggests that the colonized, perceived as imitating the colonizer, ultimately pose a threat to colonial power, the form of whiteness crafted through K-beauty may carry the colonial potential. This prompts the question, is the whiteness of K-beauty identical to ethnic whiteness? K-beauty challenges the long-standing stereotypical notion of Asians as yellow, thereby offering a new source of imagination regarding Asian identities. However, we should not disregard that Korean whiteness can be another hegemonic whiteness. The Korean entertainment industry, including K-pop, tends to exclude individuals with darker skin tones, and despite some improvements, the K-beauty industry is still criticized for failing to embrace consumers with diverse skin tones. This reflects the danger of colorism in Korea, and as Korea distances itself from Western hegemony, it may risk positioning itself within an imperial power dynamic of its own. Secondly, I would like to explore K-beauty from the perspective of the digitalization of beauty. The rise of K-beauty in gaining new influence and significance has been largely driven by the power of digital technology platforms. The advent of digital retouching tools has given rise to a new era where altering one's appearance according to personal preferences is not only possible but has become a norm. The ideals and desires surrounding K-beauty were initially mediated by media, with representations produced through technologies like digital retouching. Additionally, through social media, images of K-pop stars captured and edited by fan photographers known as the home masters are widely circulated. Platforms like YouTube have seen the rise of K-beauty tutorials and various K-beauty celebrities, highlighting how K-beauty is largely shaped and completed through digital technology. Digital space has emerged as a performative site for diverse voices to articulate and express themselves. Colored people are gaining post-colonial visibilities through digital media and technology. Moreover, digital elements can be independently modified and reused in different contexts, allowing for a vast array of iterations and representations. Such variability challenges the traditional notion of indexicality and referentiality that have historically grounded photography. In the digital age, images have become much more dynamic entities capable of being easily manipulated and tailored by individuals to fit their desired self-expressions. Having examined the post-colonial implications of K-beauty, we can further complicate the issue by posing the following questions. Is decolonization based on technological and economic development truly decolonization? Landa's exploration of the collective unintended consequences of intentional action provides a compelling framework to contemplate on the decolonizing effects of K-beauty. This concept suggests that outcomes often emerge not directly from the aims of individual actions, but from the complex interplay of multiple intentional acts. In the realm of K-beauty, the convergence of Korean cosmetic companies' profit motives, the allure of digital technology enabling personal appearance modification, and the neoliberal ethos promoting the belief in self-achievement through effort collectively contribute to a phenomenon that may inadvertently wield decolonial power. This type of decolonial flow, which is not rooted in the conscious and deliberate movements, can be highlighted as a phenomenon of the post-colonial era. By moving beyond the modernist notion of social movements driven by subjectivity, expanding the scope of decolonial phenomena to include these less deliberate forms of engagement, opens up an additional layer of post-colonial thought. Such a perspective acknowledges the complexity of how identities, cultures, and power dynamics evolve in the aftermath of colonialism, revealing the multifaceted and ongoing nature of decolonial processes. However, it is essential to scrutinize the sustainability and limitations of such decolonization. The decolonial potential of K-beauty raises questions about the depth and permanence of its impact. If the change in beauty standards is not merely superficial, to what extent does it signify a profound cultural and ideological shift? Moreover, the reliance on consumerism and technological modification of appearance might reinforce other forms of dominance and inequality, such as class disparity and access to technology. This represents the paradox faced by all post-discourses, and post-colonialism is not free from this as well. While it focuses on the ability of formerly colonized people to articulate and express their identities, thereby challenging the colonial narrative, it may also risk overlooking the persistent structures and legacies of colonialism that continue to shape global relations and identities. This is encapsulated in the critical question of post-colonial studies. Can the subaltern speak? This question, posed by Spivak, interrogates the possibility of authentic representation and voice for the marginalized people. The digital manipulation of beauty, particularly within Asian contexts, seems to say yes to her question, offering a means for individuals to assert control over their aesthetic representation. On the other hand, it may inadvertently reinforce the global power structures it seeks to challenge by perpetuating a narrow market-driven conception of beauty. To conclude, while K-beauty presented by Koreans and East Asians are far from the typical Asian beauty that has been reproduced in Western media, thus complicating and deterritorializing the notion of Asianness defined by the West, mere celebration of this phenomena might lead to the ignorance of to the existing power hierarchy sustained by global media beauty complex. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks so much, Dr. Park, now going to be a Professor Park. I'm thinking that she is watching YouTube the broadcasting, so we hope her fast recovery. Now we are going to have the last presentation by Professor Sungmin Kim. Sungmin Kim is Professor of Media and Communication, Hokkaido University. His areas of expertise are media, cultural studies, and the sociology of music. Okay, Joel, yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sungmin Kim from Hokkaido University, and it's an absolute honor to be here and to be a part of you. It's excellent project, and I've been learning a lot over two days. So first, I'd like to briefly introduce my research. My work primarily focuses on the transnational cultural flow between South Korea and Japan. For instance, my first book examines how Japanese popular culture were both banned and consumed in Korea after liberation within the broader context of evolving Korea-Japan relations. Another book explores the historical formation of K-pop from a perspective of relationships with Japan and US. And this year, I published a book on the exchange and interaction of popular music between Korea and Japan following the normalization of diplomatic relations in 1965. I usually write my book in Japanese firstly, so maybe I expect I'm gonna publish the Korean version like next year. So building on these research outcomes, I'm participating in the Global Perspectives on Hallyu team, where my research is titled Hallyu in Japan. So this study explores the evolution and diversification of Korean popular music categories since the 1970s, when the Korean music market first began to establish itself in Japan. It also examines how the Hallyu phenomenon, beginning in the 2000s, has impacted Japan's music market, media industry, and cultural perceptions of identity and otherness. As you know, Japan has been playing a quantitatively and a qualitatively significant role in the Hallyu phenomenon. Nevertheless, I think studies that examine the process and meanings of Hallyu in Japan from a historical perspective are rare. But today's presentation can be considered one such attempt. And when I refer to category or categorization or recategorization here, I'm talking about how genre classification within the popular music reflects shifts in perceptions and narratives surrounding usness and otherness, shaped through various industrial, cultural, economic, and political negotiations. Then let's dive in. I have to hurry to cover almost 50 years in 20 minutes. So it's like the YouTube clip, right? So due to time constraints, I will skip the detailed explanations of the examples shown in the photos. Okay, then the Korean popular music began to gain significant attention in Japan in the late 1970s, particularly with the success of Lee Sung-ae's debut and her hit remake song 가슴 아프게 in 1976. This hit sparked what was known as the Korean song boom, solidifying the category of Korean enka, referring to the trot genre of Korean music. Given that Korean trot was banned and censored as Japanese-style songs during this same period in Korea, like Wesekgayo, the term Korean enka can also be seen as an extension of a colonial gaze toward Koreanness. This perspective is further supported by the fact that even musicians like Cho Young-pil, Korean superstar, who performed pop and rock music, were categorized and consumed solely within the Korean enka in Japan. Industrially speaking, Japan's music market and discourse space, especially the music market, had grown to become the second largest in the world in 1969 and was directly connected to Western music. only allowed for the Korean enka category within the market for Korean popular music. From the 1980s to the early 1990s, we see the disintegration and effective disappearance of the Korean enka category. This shift is also tied to structural changes within Japan's domestic music industry. As Japan's bubble economy peaked in the late 1980s, the Japanese music industry and market underwent recategorization, focusing on the genres of pop and rock, encapsulated by the new term J-pop. So the transition from Gayo-kyoku to J-pop was both productive and catalyst for the change in the producers and consumers of popular music. With the rapid decline of Korean enka alongside Japanese enka, there was a growing movement to consume Korean pop as Asian pop, similar to the trend seen with pop from Hong Kong, Taiwan, and China, etc. However, the Korean pop music that embraced black music and dominated music charts and awards in Korea was seen as something highly distinct and foreign in Japan, fitting neither into the Asian pop category nor the J-pop category. For example, Soteji, Teji Boy's entry into the Japanese market only gained a small group of dedicated fans. Nevertheless, this period was crucial as a transitional phase, during which the rigid Korean enka category disintegrated and new perceptions and perspectives toward Korean popular music began to form. Various genres of Korean pop music started to gain attention, and collaborations between two countries were attempted. Moving through this transitional period, we see the emergence of what can truly be called Hallyu in Japan. With the phenomenon of Hallyu in East Asian region, a new term, genre, market, and culture known as K-pop began to be discovered within Japan. K-pop, first recognized in Japan through BoA's debut in 2001, was initially classified within the J-pop category. However, as Hallyu gained traction, particularly with the TV drama Winter Sonata sparking a widespread cultural phenomenon, K-pop began to distinguish itself as a separate category distinct from J-pop. From the late 2000s, K-pop began to establish its own unique space within the broader Hallyu phenomenon and started to exert significant influence on Japan. First, it impacted the categorization within Japan's music industry. K-pop, with its mix of Korean and Japanese lyrics, began to transcend the boundaries of both J-pop and Western pop categories. This fluidity started to dismantle the long-standing categories in Japan, which had been traditionally divided into Japanese music and Western music. Second, it influenced Japan's soft power discourse and cultural policies. Around 2010, K-pop had a substantial impact on the direction of Japan's Cool Japan strategy. However, a superficial understanding or misunderstanding of K-pop focused primarily on government policies ultimately contributed to the failure of the Cool Japan strategy in the 2010s. Third, it affected the framework of understanding Japan-Korea relations. Even as Korea-Japan relations rapidly deteriorated after 2012, the K-pop market and culture continued to expand, free from the influence of traditional mass media. While the Hallyu phenomenon in Japan in the 2000s was closely coupled with the Korea-Japan relation, following the 1998 Kim Dae-jung-Obuchi Declaration, from this period onwards, we begin to see a decoupling of traditional Korea-Japan relations from the movements of the cultural sphere. Lastly, it had an impact on nationalism and broader social atmosphere. Japan's far-right and xenophobic forces launched the so-called Kenkan, Hate Korea movement, in response to Hallyu. This xenophobia is deeply rooted in the historical context of discrimination against Koreans throughout the 20th century. However, it can also be seen as a derivative phenomenon of the Hallyu that began in the 2000s. As Hallyu expanded, it became more visible and commercialized, eventually establishing a distinct category within Japan's publishing industry and online discourse spaces. I think that the upcoming book chapter will likely focus primarily on this period. The success of K-pop led by BTS in the United States has brought immense shock and amazement to Japan as a whole, an industry that had been knocking on the door of the US market since Q Sakamoto's Billboard #1 hit in 1963. From this point on, we see a shift from merely consuming K-pop in Japan to approaching the K-pop industry, market, and fandom as a platform for globalization. Collaboration systems centered on Korean music companies and media have expanded, and there has been an explosive increase in young Japanese musicians and performers seeking to enter the global market by first entering the K-pop. I will conclude my presentation by reading the discussion part. The Hallyu phenomenon has deconstructed the market and cultural framework of Korean music, which had been defined and entrenched around the Korean enka category since the 1970s. This shift has resulted in a reconfiguration of categories within contemporary Korean music. Additionally, this process has involved the reconstruction of Japan's post-war Koreanism, which was reinforced during the Cold War. This transformation not only reshaped perceptions of Korea, but also prompted shifts in Japan's self-identity, traditionally positioned between Asia and the West, particularly the United States. These changes have been reflected in the rise of anti-Hallyu sentiments, a growing sense of cultural and economic insecurity, and the implementation of competitive cultural policies. The globalization of K-pop has pushed Japan's K-pop market and industry beyond the conventional framework of import and export, transforming it into a transnational music market where local and global contexts intersect. K-pop's significant achievements in the US market have notably reshaped J-pop industry's understanding of globalization and its strategies. While Japan's market and infrastructure continue to play a crucial role in K-pop's global expansion, a significant development since the late 2010s has been K-pop's increasing role as a platform for J-pop's own global ambitions. In summary, Hallyu has evolved from a cultural phenomenon into a crucial matter of Japan's self-identification, intersecting its cultural, social, economic, and political spheres. Considering the colonial and Cold War context of the 20th century, this makes it a significant and intriguing development in both Korea-Japan relations and post-war world history. And just to clarify, this does not imply that K-pop is musically superior to J-pop. I hope this discussion does not devolve into another form of nationalistic discourse. That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much, Professor Sung-min Kim. All presenters made the time the consciousness presentation. Now we are inviting discussant. Each speaker has 2 discussants, and each discussant has maximum 5 minutes. But in order to secure time to get the Q&As, we are going to have the 3-4 minute discussions, and followed by short answers by presenters. The first discussant, Sang-Jun Lee, Professor Sang-Jun Lee at the City University of Hong Kong, unluckily health issue, so could not make his trip to South Korea yesterday. So I'm the only one discussant. So again, very brief. In terms of your presentation, Dr. Zhou, it's very interesting, very informative and compelling. So we learned a lot through several different concepts, but in particular, inter-Asia referencing. As several speakers today talked about, we are going to talk about the globalization of Korean popular culture, not only East Asian integration. In the 1990s, early 2000s, the majority of popular culture went to East Asia. Therefore, East Asian referencing was one of the major theoretical frameworks in understanding and analyzing the local penetration. But as Netflix indicates, and the K-pop indicates, Korean popular culture is global. And therefore, I'm just curious about whether East Asian referencing is still meaningful. If so, then what's the value of East Asian referencing in the globalization of Korean popular culture?
Okay, thank you for the questions. And yeah, so as far as I understand, your question is about the different status of the concept of inter-Asia referencing between the early 2000 when the East Asian pop culture has been burning and Korean wave is circulated within Asia context. And then the difference when the Korean wave or Hallyu has been globalized as of now. And as you point out correctly, I think the concept itself has not been changed, but the context around the concept has been changing. The idea of East Asia or the discussion of the importance of Asia or East Asian pop culture has disappeared, at least in the discussion among Korean scholars or media. I think it's not because East Asia is not important, but because South Korean media experts or even scholars always, prioritize the global, in this case, usually West, Europe, or United States consume. So in this sense, many people trying to understand how the West, US, or European audience and fans are consume that kind of the Hallyu phenomenon. However, I think because of that kind of the nature, I still think that kind of attention to East Asia is still important because one of the issue around Hallyu is a kind of both. One is too nationalistic in South Korean circumstances, and the other way is that East Asia is still important to connect Hallyu to the global. And as Sojung present from the video, the beauty or the representation of Asian people are still very meaningful, not only to Korean, but also Asian to the global audiences. In understanding Hallyu through East Asia would be the core potential for thinking meaningfulness of Hallyu that is not limited with the state-oriented understanding of Hallyu. And I think my purpose to using Hallyu study as decolonial knowledge production is not to remove United States or West from the discussion of Hallyu studies, but to multiply our reference or our thinking of the frame using Japan, for instance. So I think still East Asia and as well as the concept such as inter-Asia reference is more than important in the arena when the Hallyu is globalized. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. The second presentation is by the Hae-kyung, and we have there two discussants. The first discussant is Eun-jung Lee from Free University of Berlin. The second discussant is Ji-young Seo, the researcher at Hallyu Center at the SNU. So let me invite Eun-jung Lee first.
Professor, I enjoyed your presentation a lot, and it is really inspiring to see that Hallyu from the perspective of exhibition and cultural heritage. So to analyze the role of Hallyu through the lens of the cultural heritage or cultural exhibition provokes a compelling endeavor. I think your work bears a significance in two crucial aspects. Firstly, it provokes a contemplation on the role of the nation or nation state in the context of cultural placeness, and secondly, it illustrates the import of exhibition in the cultural disseminations. And it may be premature to assess the cultural heritage significance of Hallyu as it remains in ongoing cultural phenomenon. And this is too early to talk about Hallyu as cultural heritage. It's a question of the time, I think. However, when one considers how exhibitions such as Great Expo in the 19th century were instrumental in gaining the meaning of the Japanism or Japanese boom in Europe, and have decisively contributed to Europeans' enduring admiration for Japanese culture, one can readily anticipate the profound significance of your research, I think. In this vein, I aspire to more frequent opportunities, this is a suggestion to Professor Kwon, to give us more opportunity to talk, to cooperate with among us, because we have so many points which we can exchange each other in with your argument, and to combine my paper, what I'm writing about the East Asian popular culture, the wave of East Asian popular culture in Europe since the 17th century, and your work, and then the work of Professor Cho's with the decolonization or Hallyu studies, is actually impressive to see that, but we didn't have opportunities to talk among us to make our book more meaningful. I think we need more opportunity or chance to talk each other. That is one point. And the cruise of our collective deliberation should be the relationship between Hallyu and the nation state. But it was pointed out several times, the nation state or the meaning of the government in a Hallyu. But this aspect has arguably engendered in the most controversy within Hallyu discourse, and we need more time and the space to discuss about this point. Thank you.
Okay, now invite Dr. Jiyoung. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jiyoung Seo. I'm a Korean cultural historian working in the Asian Center, SNU Asian Center, the Center for Korean Study and Hallyu Studies. Sorry. I'm very happy to join this conference, and now I'm giving a few comments and questions for Professor Um's presentation. Thank you so much for your inspiring presentation, and your paper raises lots of fascinating topics for debate. What is most impressive to me is that this presentation opens up a new way to approach the Hallyu phenomenon, which actually requires multiple angles to deal with the multifaceted dimensions of Hallyu, I think. Today, I'm going to bring up 3 points that appear not to be fully addressed in today's presentation, perhaps due to the time limit. And the first one is about Hallyu's definition and classification as a cultural heritage. According to the UNESCO definition, the cultural and natural heritage around the world is considered to be of outstanding value to humanity. And the concept of world heritage is remarkable because of its universal application. Currently, we see that Hallyu is gaining global acclaim and its worldwide circulation beyond national borders. If we posit Hallyu as cultural heritage that deserves to be preserved and or protected, such as documentary heritage as suggested by UNESCO, or as a different kind of global cultural heritage shared in common by people from diverse backgrounds. My question is, which aspects of Hallyu could be highlighted more than emphasizing specific Korean identities within local contexts? For instance, what knowledge about humanity can Hallyu provide, and how can deal with this? So this is my first point. And second point is the canonization of Hallyu. The canonization issue in the literature and cultural sectors since the early 20th century coincided with the establishment of a hierarchy between high culture and low culture, thereby intensifying the marginalization of popular culture or mass culture in general. But indeed, Hallyu products are characterized highly commodified popular culture content in its mass manufactured system. So could you share more with us about whether Hallyu is fostering the redistribution of our values beyond the dichotomy or hierarchy between high and low culture or tradition and modernity? Or if there are any other observations on this issue in your case studies. The last point is the audience engagement in the making of Hallyu as cultural heritage. You mentioned that Hallyu's mutualization acts as platforms of soft power based on the shared interest of the state and commerce. However, as you also noted that these Hallyu exhibition projects across or beyond the South Korea could create diverse implications through different curatorial approaches and exhibition contexts and audience receptions. So I'm curious about the various and dynamic layers of the reconstruction or deconstruction of Korean culture depending on the different target audiences and among heterogeneous audiences based on such factors as ethnicity or generation and gender in this Hallyu exhibition project. So, for example, I wonder if there are any indications of dismantling the Western constructed ideological and thinking patterns about Korean culture in the case of British audiences, as well as the perceptions of Korean culture among Korean audiences themselves through this mutualization of Hallyu. Okay, I think you can answer all the questions, but I'm really grateful if you can touch on some issues about this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. So, Professor, you have the max 5 minutes, so you have the
I'm so glad I have only 5 minutes.
no problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, both the Professor Lee and Professor Seo, for your most valuable comments. And this is going to be really helpful for me to write up and consider the points in the writing process. I will respond to one or two aspects of Professor Lee's question, whether this considering Hallyu as a cultural heritage is it too soon? But then we have to think about what cultural heritage is, because it's contemporary. I mean, when do you they draw a line when something becomes worth preserving or archiving and worth? Because this we're talking about 21st century. Quite a lot of the things which made kind of shape the Hallyu is from late 20th century or early 21st century. So I think it somehow the heritage somehow it has kind of stuck in some kind of a preconception that it has to be very old, but it isn't. It isn't. I think we have to kind of think more, think about cultural heritage in a more, let's say, in a different light altogether, especially when it comes to popular culture, in the contemporary culture, especially in the digital area, because so to some extent, it probably answers one of the questions asked by Professor Seo about the, UNESCO's definition. There are three different definitions. A documentary heritage is very, very important now. It doesn't have to be very old and so on and so forth. So contemporary document, the heritage is a very, very, very important aspect of a UNESCO heritage. So they really shift the timeline considerably in a more recent time. Of course, there's a tangible, intangible, and the documentary. But the thing about the Hallyu is that it covers all three, because there's a tangible, intangible, and a documentary. So that, in that respect, I think it makes the Hallyu become even more powerful, and a powerful kind of the idea to be to consider the Hallyu as a cultural heritage. But then again, whose cultural heritage it is? And when we really put the time signature and so on and so forth, because especially when it's a constantly moving, it's a moving target, changing the moving target. Another thing is because it's a popular, that means that there's a hierarchical kind of the value, cultural capital, political capital, economic capital. So that I think this is something which you really have to think, have to kind of free from that the pre-consumption. And so Hallyu and the roles of the nation, I mean, probably sometimes, quite often it's overemphasized. But there's something which I was really appreciated when I went to Gwangju, and how important is the local, curators, how they want to see as what is valuable and what is relevant for them to think about the 20th century or late 20th century, even 21st century, their cultural heritage, to feel that the Gwangju is a truly artistic city. So I think that really opened my eyes in many ways. So I think it's always the fieldwork is the best way to find out what's really happening in the world. And the Hallyu definition, also heritage definitions that are really open. And whether it's a Hallyu is to be protected or preserved, again, and what aspect of a Hallyu is, I mean, you can choose from something like the what do you call it? The light, a light you and there's a certain kind of let's say trend that will change after a while. After let's say within 5 or 10 years, it will become a very important, valuable kind of the object, because it really shows how certain things progress and change over time, and what do they really meant for those who are consumed and collected, those who collected. So Hallyu can be collected by the state or museum or individuals. This is what was really interesting, that some of the objects that was brought in the museum by private collectors, and the people, actually most people were paying more attention to those little items because they could recognize, they could relate it. Relatable, so different kind of level of the curation. So that means it doesn't have to be kind of a top-down approach, but a bottom-up. So it's a different kind of archiving, curational kind of approach. I think that's what Hallyu probably needs more than any other kind of artwork. And the canonization of Hallyu, again, because it's against because it's manufactured, does it mean that it's not worth archiving? I don't think so. I think we have to really think again, and because it's not disposable. Manufactured doesn't mean that it's not disposable. And whatever we use in even everyday life, because it is something about everyday lifeness, is also become a very important part of our human history and the culture. So I think in that respect, I think Hallyu can really, the archiving and the canonization tell us so much about the everyday life and popular culture. So that's a contribution, I think. And so what kind of value could I put? Many, many different kinds, yeah. So audience question, that will be more difficult. I really have to ask discuss with the curators, and also I need to go to the exhibitions more often, but the people don't want to talk to me. So it's a bit difficult to talk with the, so I think I'm past the 5 minutes, but
Sure.
yeah. So thank you very much.
Okay, so now we have the third presentation by Sojong Park, and we have the another two discussants, Vincent Zhou and Sylvie from the France. We understand that Sojong Park cannot respond to the discussion, but I'm still thinking that she is taking memo for the later stage, so it still worse.
We would like to thank the Global Hallyu team for organizing this fantastic event, especially our good friend, Professor Hong. The conference is great, the panel too, and the presentation of Professor Park, very stimulating. We were so stimulated that we decided to establish a dialogue. We tried, always. In order to think about a very important point, a point that is at stake today. I have a strong voice, I don't need this, but anyway. Okay, we decide to ask a question. If you want to build some commonalities today, if you want to think about an inclusive world, inclusive world related to the question of body and beauty, as you can see in this picture, a post-colonial perspective is good. The colonial perspective is good also, but it's not enough. And as the great actress Marilyn Monroe said once, when we tell a story, we have to see both sides. We have to tell both sides. So let's start the discussion with, I can't do everything. I have just 2 legs. Okay, thank you. And 2 hands. So let's start with this sentence, what we find in a fantastic novel written by a very important Korean writer, Kim Young-ha. I think that you know this guy very well, especially the novel, Your Republic is Calling You. We read it in French translation. And in this novel, the main character, Aeong, he started to draw a character of a manhwa. And this character is a girl. And as you can see, this girl has big eyes and long legs. She's supposed to be Korean. This is a kind of self-representation. It's not an orientalistic gaze. It's the gaze of a South Korean writer. And this is a presentation for Korean audience and for the rest of the world. So we try to imagine the origin of this self-representation, because it's not a Western representation. We don't have the idea that when we start to draw a picture of a woman, that this girl will have big eyes and long legs. So let's imagine the origin of this self-representation. It's not Western. Maybe this comes from Japan. And maybe because in these woodblock prints that were very important in Europe and later in the Western societies, in this, how do you pronounce it? Ukiyo-e? Great. Good pronunciation. I tried many times. I repeat. Okay, ukiyo-e. And you can see that they don't have big eyes. They don't have long legs, maybe, but nobody knows. Who cares? And this had a very strong impact in Europe. Look at these two paintings, very famous by Monet and Manet, in which you can see Japanese ukiyo-e in the back, and even the wife of Claude Monet with a Japanese dress. And in the two paintings, you don't have this kind of representation. But this is the origin. This is Japanese. Everybody knows Leiji Matsumoto, two very important animes, mangas, and then animes. How do you say in Japan? The name is Kyoputen. Kyoputen. Huh? It's Kyoputen Aroku. Kyoputen Aroku. Okay, in Italian it's Capitan Harlock, but anyway. And in French it's Albator. And you can see the origin of everything. Long legs, big eyes, and the V-shape face. This is the origin. Okay, someone can say, oh, but Leiji Matsumoto said once that he was inspired by an European actress. Nobody knows her name, but this is very Japanese. This has a very strong impact for the idea we have of beauty, not only in Korea, but especially in Europe. And if you compare the anime, the characters, so, no, sorry, oh shit, see this. It's too bad. If you compare these characters with real women, girls, they are much more similar to these characters than to other representation that we have in Western societies.
If I may continue, they look like those girls. This is an advertisement for H&M. I'm not advertising for H&M, but it's very interesting because it's global. And this global norm, it's like those kind of body, big eyes, long legs. You don't see the legs, but they are long, I can assure you. But at the same time, so our first question was, what are the circulation of norms and ideas, thank you, and images. Second question is, what is Western? What is really Western? We are supposed to be the Western of the panel, so we're trying to reflect on ourselves. What is really Western? So this kind of images, they are pretty much like the mangas we consume when we are little. And the mangas were not French, and were not American. At the same time, there is an enormous flux of advertisement for what we call different bodies. Different bodies is that different colors, different, let's say, volumes, not to say more. And those trends are transforming our relation to what is beauty currently. For many reasons. The first one is demographic. In the West, many countries are multicultural, as France is, for example, and the States is also. And in a few times, in 25 years approximately, there will be more non-white in the US than white people. So is the West still white? What does that mean? Currently in France, I know I have to explain that all the time to my Korean colleagues who do not know French that much. We have a migration country. I may appear white, but I have 5 nationalities in my background. I'm not that white, right? So white, I'm not sure what does that mean. In France, that's complicated. It doesn't mean that there is no racism in France. I'm not saying that, of course. So the question is more about marketing, how to attract a lot of people that want to be beautiful in many different ways, in many different parts of the world. And again, this is interesting to focus on France, not because I'm French, but because France appears to be one of the major countries for beauty. We own L'Oréal, for example, and the French companies account for 50% of the global market for beauty, for cosmetics. So is the beauty French? Is Frenchness spread all over the world? I don't think so. Let me show you. those are the companies that are most advertising towards especially the young market. So this is Beyoncé, she's Afro-American. This is, you don't see her, but she's Kim Kardashian, which is non-white again, and the market share are huge. This is, of course, the K-beauty, and do you know what this is? Have you any idea? So it's one of the most French company advertising for black beauty. So French companies do black beauty. We do not display only Frenchness, meaning whiteness, because Frenchness is not whiteness, and white in the West is not white anymore for a long time. So our question was more about redefining what the post-colonial here really helps to understand and to really grasp, apart from what has to do with, let's say, global marketing and global competition in the beauty market. Of course, the K-beauty is a trend that appears to gain leverage in Europe. You have some numbers here. But what attracts people in this K-beauty, according to the data we have and inquiry we have, is that it's cute and it's funny. And it has to do with the branding of the Hallyu as a whole, in fact. It's not because it's, may I say, yellow or Asian. It's because this country has developed a creativity that is cute and funny at the same time. And other people don't do that the same way. Another reason why it's so popular is that because it's less expensive per product for the average product. But you have to buy a lot, because there is a 10-step Korean beauty ritual, which is something really complicated for someone like me, who barely puts something once in a day on my face. But 10 products, that's a new hegemony. Can you imagine young people in every part of the world putting 10 products every morning on their face? That's a lot. That's really a lot. That's not something white people do. White people do. If white does exist. So, I mean, we have to really, as a final conclusion, what we propose is that, of course, post-colonial studies are really interesting and are helping us to understand what is at stake, but we have all the time, every time we use that kind of concept to define them very strictly, very precisely, according to the object, the subject we are dealing with. Otherwise, we mix different level of analysis and probably don't grasp that much on what is at stake. Many thanks for your attention.
Okay, thanks so much. Now, first discussant is Professor Hae-kyung. I'm changing your role from the presenter to discussant. And the second discussant is Professor Eunmi Kim in the Department of Communication at SNU.
Eunmi Kim, thank you for inviting me as a discussant. My next door colleague, Professor Seok Kyung-hong, knows me very well, and she knows that I never come to school during weekends. That's why she had to invite me over for the discussion. But thanks for the whole interesting section, not only Professor Kim Sang-min's presentation, but starting from Professor Cho Young-han's sort of a proposal or his views on what the directions of Hallyu studies should be. I think the organizers did a pretty good job in placing Professor Cho Young-han's presentation first and Professor Kim Sang-min's presentation at the last, so that what Professor Cho Young-han proposed as a sort of a directional for the ideal direction of the Hallyu studies. I think Kim Sang-min's presentation and his thread of studies over decades of pop culture between Korea and Japan showed a very good example of how we can concretely study globalization rather than globalization as a state, but globalization as a process. Because as an avid reader of what is so-called global television over decades, from like 80s cultural imperialism, 90s transponder data transportation, satellite television, up to platformization of Netflix, every time I read a chapter or book or paper, at the end, when I close the book, I always wondered, it's this sort of unpleasant feeling of each author says global or globalization, but everybody says a different thing, and it's very vague and very muggy and obscure. But I think Professor Kim Sung-min's presentation and his study showed a very clever way of capturing something in action as it moved around these close East Asian countries, Japan and Korea, exchanging their identities during their sort of a collective conversation via consuming or exporting and importing cultural products. That brings to my second point that I wanna focus. That I thought Professor Kim Sung-min's presentation was very clever to focus on categorization itself. I think in two aspects, putting focus on categorization is very strategic and very fruitful as we involve these Hallyu studies. Because first, rather than talking about individual artists or specific cultural products or Billboard charts and nitty-gritty things, how a collective group, in this case Japanese public, categorize these pop words, this captures very well a frame of a collective mind or attitude toward the other culture. So in that way, I think this is a much more clever way than tackling, putting the all data of individual artists or products. My second point is, I'm thinking of how we should evolve the study of cultural industry in the age of AI and datafication and categorization and putting all these detailed data into categories and just to study how people categorize and reconceptualize. So following that line might shed a light on how we should study cultural industry in the datafication and AI age. So yeah, that's the second point that I thought your tactic was very clever. Third point I want to make is that his presentation opened my eyes on the concept or phenomena of Kenkan. Hyamhan. I really didn't pay much attention about Hyamhan phenomenon as a phenomenon because I thought, any country has extreme voices. Any country, no matter where you go, there are extreme groups of people, hating, voicing out. So I thought, it's just, Hyamhan. I know the phenomenon, but I didn't pay much attention. But I thought, as I was reading his PowerPoint slide, made me wonder, this is very interesting phenomenon itself. I don't know any other case or in the history or in the global cultural industries that, is there any collective attitude expressed toward not likes or not fans, but very proactive voicing out dislike of a certain genre or a certain cultural product. So this is in fact very, very unique phenomenon as of itself, independent of fandom studies or K-pop studies. So at the end of the presentation, you sort of implied that you're going to be focusing on the study on Hyamhan. So I was very glad that he will be the first or one of the first people who will present the scholarly world the study focused on Hyamhan itself. I was wondering, is there any serious interest among Japanese scholars or scholars in Japan to focus on this phenomena in a global context? So it would be very interesting to hear more about it. My last point is that I was given your presentation slide rather than the full paper, so I was glad that it took me a little time to read over. But I was wondering, because you dealt with from enka to K-pop in a sort of one thread, maybe you might wanna, during your responding time, you might wanna highlight the difference between the enka period and K-pop period, because to me, enka period is not really cultural export or cultural exchange. It's just a purely market size difference. I mean, Korea during the enka export period was substantially different from Korea during Hallyu contemporary Korea. Those two countries are very different in terms of market size or in terms of cultural industry perspective. So I wonder if putting enka and then K-pop and things like that in a one thread is I don't know if it's a wise treatment of that lineage. It's because it's a much more substantial difference between those periods, and of course you might want to highlight more on the difference in platforms. Because the platforms really do make difference, and platforms and algorithms have intentions and minds of their own. So those two periods might be fundamentally different in terms of many aspects. So you might want to highlight that in your response, and that'll be very helpful to me to fully grasp the meaning of your paper. Postscript, to make a rhyme with your presentation's ending remark, I have to confess I love J-pop, and Matsuda Seiko was my teen idol. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kim, for your most interesting and also very entertaining presentation. It was really fascinating because I love J-pop myself. We all do. So mine is kind of a very, let's say, very simple and straightforward. And I really loved the way you show the interesting, complex relationship between Japanese and Korean music industries. And here you kind of focus on the enka and the idol pop, more specifically, not just a J-pop, but idol pop. So did any other genres such as Japanese rock or visual K or Japanese hip hop and punk or this, do they play any role in this Japanese Korean kind of transnational development? That's kind of my small question. And there's kind of another small question is that in connection to enka, there were quite a before the Korean enka singers in Lee Sung-ye and so on and so forth, there was the Taiwan-born the enka singer Teresa Teng, who was really popular from 1973 to about mid-80s. Now she's born again through AI. So, so in a way, I mean, the Taiwan. It has a lot to do with inter-Asian kind of connection again, going back to Professor Cho's paper. It was a Taiwanese singer who was really popular in Japan, and then it was taken over by Korean and so on and so forth. So in a way, it is a very kind of trans-Asian the music genre. Whereas idol pop, I'm wondering if at all is it possible for us to think about orderless the pop as kind of orderlessness which Iwabuchi presented. So whereas enka, it is a very Asian kind of pop, and the idol pop, including J-pop and K-pop, and so K-pop become even more orderless than J-pop to some extent. So I'm wondering if this is the kind of the Japanese music industry is kind of pursuing from more Japanese to kind of more global. Than in this case, the K-pop show how they could do it, how they can make it orderless. Because it's a Korean K-pop, but at the same time, it includes everything. So this is kind of more like the question which I would like to ask, but actually this kind of question which is more difficult to answer because you can't really kind of put the finger on. So I just want to ask what you think of this kind of the open question. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your two professors' excellent questions, and I'm really honored, and I was really glad that because what I wanted to say is it's not just about the story of Hallyu, right? It's about the story of Japan itself, the interactions and hybridities, and so I'm so glad. And from Professor Kim, I got really excellent questions. And yes, there was actually since 1970s there was huge publication boom of Japanese discourse or Japanese society wrong. They always wanted to ask what or who is Japanese. So, and how we means Japanese is being seen by the others, especially the Western, right? So the attitude toward the world is very strict, and there is a very strict hierarchy, and even in the world of popular music, right? So, as you know, the Sakai Naoki said, there's something like the whiteness they always been imagined. And especially in the 1970s and 80s, Japan, especially Tokyo, was the center of the world in the East Asian region. That's why many of Korean singers went to the song festivals in Tokyo by Yamaha, right? So there was the kind of cultural order in the era of Kayokyoku. So those orders and hierarchies was so strict before K-pop emerged in 2000s, because even when the structure of popular music in Japan has changed a lot from Kayokyoku to J-pop, the order or hierarchy has not changed a lot. It was just selection and concentration from Kayokyoku as just rock and pop, right? But another structure is the inside hierarchy between mass media and subculture, because in Korea, people felt the huge changes before and after the democratization in the late 1980s, right? It was a huge revolution. But in Japan, before and after the birth of J-pop, like Kayokyo or the city pop in the 1970s, it was very conservative revolution. It was very different from Korean examples. So that's why the enka was Kayokyoku, and Masa Seiko's song was Kayokyoku, and Idol's pop was really close to the very traditional music. So and what K-pop had affected on Japan was changed those very strict order or perception on themselves. So it was about how to imagine the world, how to imagine the East Asia or the relations between Asia and the West, or Japan and America. Even they listen to K-pop, their way to imagine the America has been changed. So it was a really important point. And that's why many of sociologists in Japan said that before 1970 was post-war, and after the 1970s it was post-war. Post-Sengo. That's a huge changes. So we can see those changes from the world of popular music, and from Professor of course, Japanese hip hop was introduced in Japanese society earlier than Korea in the 1980s, but it was always subculture, not the central, the music, because there was a strict order between the center and periphery. So though the K-pop, what K-pop has changed was not just the center. They changed the peripheral order. So that's why these days on TikTok, many of Japanese hip hop has huge, the movement in the Japanese fandom, and Teresa Tan, who was the big the issue in the 1970s. She debuted as an idol from Taiwan and failed. Then she become the enka musician. That's why I talked about Jo Young-pil. So the most important part is from Japan, and through the old the decolonized, they started to change their perception and even emotion, or how to imagine the world. It really is strict, and it was constructed through the 20th century, or over 100 years. This is what I wanted to say today. Thank you very much for your question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for presentation discussions. Luckily, we saved 10 minutes for final Q&A. So already several. So I thought that the Grace first. So yeah.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this session. My questions are for Professor Kim. I learned so much from your talk. Thank you so much. I had two questions. One is about the HYBE group N team, and then also the JYP group Niju. For those of you who aren't who don't know about this, these are two Japanese groups put out by K-pop companies with mostly Japanese members, but not 100%. I'm wondering how they're being perceived. Are they a K-pop group, J-pop group, mixture, so forth? And then second related question is, what are the language preferences for people, K-pop consumers in Japan? Do they prefer the songs in Japanese and English, both, Korean? Just very curious, because I know nothing about Japan, Japanese consumption. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for it. It's a really important question, because it was related to the relations between center and periphery, because even the J-pop and JYP and Sony made the Niju, the center was television broadcasting. The Nihon Nihon Television. It was established in 1954 with the NHK, the same period. So that's why one of them who got the prize, the 101, they denied to be called K-pop group, but Niju want to be one of K-pop groups for their globalization, and language is very important, because what can I say? The audience who just enjoy K-pop through TV, of course they want to listen to the K-pop in Japanese language, right? But many fans who wanted to want their groups to be global star, they wanted to listen, they always want to listen to the Korean lyrics, and when the NHK or the broadcasting, they broadcasted like Suga or BTS song was broadcasted in Korean language. They really got the huge phenomenon in Japan, and so language is really important, because in Japan there's long history of zainichi, right? So they always care the language, like the Koshien baseball in the game. There's school song. It was in Korean. So that's why, and of course in Korea and Japan, always want to listen to music in their domestic language, right? So it's very complicated. But the important thing is the way to imagine the globalization in Japan has been changed through the lyrics or the attitude or fashion even on the television. Thank you very much.
So we have two more questions. One, if I'm not incorrect, Spencer Lee and Mellos Huang. So Spencer Lee first. Yeah, you first.
Wonderful talks. I came away with many questions, but I'd like to ask one that pertains specifically to Hallyu and Korean studies as practiced overseas, which I think will matter to many of the scholars assembled in the room. And I'd like to ask about the possibility that Hallyu may be permanent. Korean studies as practiced overseas may not, or may not yet be. So in the sense that, in a sense, the Ryu part of Hallyu may be a misnomer insofar as these cultural gains, so it may not be a trend. So I think that it's possible so that the successes of the past decade plus for Korean culture globally may simply be now so consolidated as to be permanent. And the aftermath of Hallyu simply is continued Korean presence on the world stage indefinitely. But that seems to me very different from the infrastructure of Korean studies as practiced overseas. So where there are still many positions that don't exist at universities, To take a drastic example, until recently, Yale University, from which I just graduated, had no full-time professor dedicated to Korean studies at all, and that had been the case for the past century. This raises the question, if you are, to address the concerns of Professor Cho Young-han's paper, a young student interested in Korean culture in Mumbai or Nigeria or Moscow, where are you turning to engage with Korean culture? So even some of the best endowed institutions are only now turning around to making positions in Korean studies permanent. And how might we, as Korean scholars, go about ensuring, so as Japanologists and Japanese culture did over a century ago, so that popular interest in culture translates into sustained institutional presence for Korean studies over the long term?
Can I have the answer to your question too?
Actually, my question kind of nicely dovetails your question as well. It is directed to Professor Cho and Professor Park, who's not here. But it's actually, if I can just pitch something really quickly, I'm looking for a manuscript, 1 or 2 manuscripts that are dealing with this issue of decolonizing Korean studies. It's going to be published through Asia Network Exchange sometime next year. So if anybody has a paper, please let me know. But on this point of decolonization, I want to see if we can have a more kind of global conversation where we're addressing a couple of things. One of the things is, how does Hallyu interrogate the issue of settler colonialism? And then how does Hallyu interrogate the issue of land sovereignty? So those are 2 things that then I think bring us into conversation with decolonization scholars in the Americas, in Oceania, and other places. And if we can think about that, perhaps with the connection between soft power and hard power, and what Hallyu does in negotiating those forms of power, that might be one way of doing it. But I just wanted to see if anybody here, and especially Professor Cho, has a thought on that.
Okay, yeah, so
I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer to related question. Is about the package of Korean study in the foreign country, particularly in the US and European country, where the area study has been born and developed a lot. And yeah, all of us have sensed that there are big transformation in Korean studies from the more kind of the more historic perspective, include literature, history, and language, to the more contemporary works. And probably this place and this kind of event, even the big project, has been initiated by the political scientists and social scientists who want more put emphasis on the contemporary issues, and the topics should be more highlight, even not only in Korean context, but also by the European or American university in the institutional level. So because I work in the Korean context, it's very hard to how to locate the kind of the transformation made possible. But it is sure that the Hallyu becomes kind of the big promoter for area studies scholar, not only Korean studies, but also East Asian scholar, pay attention to the more contemporary changes and exchange among the people and society in the contemporary level. So in this sense, it's a kind of the, in a more human way, I think inter-Asia collaboration is necessary in the area studies and East Asian study in the US, and particular in the US and foreign universities. There will be some more kind of the collaborated, kind of more collaboration among scholars, among Asian, between the Korean, Japanese, or Chinese scholar, with exchange of their knowledge for the past history to the more contemporary thing.
Okay, so I think that we have only 1 minute. So maybe at the chair of the session, I may say that the Korean wave is always in crisis, over the past 30 years, the Korean, the scholars, the foreign scholars say, oh, where is the Korean wave going? So Korean, the pop music, the dramas are disappearing, so and so forth. But it has passed 30 years. So Korean wave started in 1994, 1993. We are going to prosper. The reason is that unlike other countries' popular culture, Korean wave has very unique stance because it's not only K-pop, it's not only Korean drama, it's not only film, but webtoon, digital culture, digital technology together. So they work together and one after another to make their bigger scale, and therefore Korean wave is not in crisis but in prosper. That's the first thing. Secondly, in terms of our structure, I think the committee is great because they put K-pop by grace first, and there are several presenters yesterday, including Shin Hong-chul, Son Yu-kyung, talked about narratives, the storytelling. Today we are talking about Hallyu and followed by popular music. So popular culture is kind of the cornerstone in combining several subjects. Therefore, we are talking about not only the first international conference for the contemporary Korean studies, but we are finding new kind of the subject to work together. That's the popular culture. Thanks so much.